Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about player connections.
Player connections.
Player or character?
Probably both.
Okay.
This usually happens in a game where it's a lot of role playing going on, right? People want connections between the characters that matter, not just, oh, he's my brother, and that never really comes up in a game. Connections between the characters. And this is important in a lot of games where I think a lot of more modern games where it's more about
It's more about that you need a reason to be with these people other than just meeting them in a tavern
there's always that
and
one.
deciding to go on an adventure together.
That's that. Yeah, let's go. I just met you, and you're heavily armed to the teeth. Let's go out in the wilderness all by ourselves and hang out. That doesn't make too much sense. Yeah, I would say in the last 20 or 30 years, there's been this push where that whole tavern idea of meeting in a tavern, finding a job, and doing the job with total strangers sounds like it's just too contrived, right?
It's a very bad idea.
I mean, in real life, you probably never would do that. Except
Unless you're a mercenary.
unless you're in the 70s, right? Hitchhiking or something. So how do you make that happen, right? How do you facilitate that as a GM? I think the hardest thing to do is to make these connections and make them sound or be plausible and make sense and not be too contrived or forced, right? And I think the best time and the best way I ever did it was when I started one of my, it was probably 5th edition. It might have even been, I'm pretty sure it was 5th edition campaign. And I had a lot of players, right? I had all of you guys.
Yeah, there were a lot of players.
And then I think I had 8 or 9. And what I did was I contacted you by email because having a session 0 was still very foreign to all of us. And in the emails, I made connections between players. Like, oh, you know this player. And in the email, I had groups of players. Like, for example, Alan and his dad, Steve, were connected because they were both from a certain part of the world. And basically, I made couples of everybody, right? Not couples in relationship wise, but couples that they knew each other. And when I contacted them in
Groups.
In the email group. So I had like 4 email groups. And in that email, I would tell them, okay, this is what you do. This is what you're doing. You're in the town. I gave them just background and told them, you know, this guy or this person. And through the emails, you all had some connection to somebody else.
Right. And I was reading that's the old way, that the GM shouldn't come up with the connections.
Well, you're right. I think that was a little bit forced, right? Because I put you two guys together.
But you were giving us a reason to be together at the time.
Correct.
Versus, oh, you all met in a tavern and here you go.
Correct. And I needed you to be on a road.
Right.
And I guess I was railroading you guys in a certain sense because I didn't give you complete freedom to do whatever you wanted. I needed you to be on the road and leaving Suzale.
Right.
That was it.
Now, today, you would have said, okay, you're going to need to be here when the game starts. Tell me how you get here.
Right.
Whereas before, and also you would probably do it where you would say, and a lot of games do this now, how do you know the person next to you? One of the things, creating character connections, they say you should create 2 character connections. I'm using air quotes. And sometimes they give you questions, right? Ask the person on the right one of these questions, ask the person on the left a different question. And then that's how you know each other. You can come up with all kinds of ideas, right?
Or you ask them, how do you know the person on the right?
Yeah.
And so on. Everybody does it. So everybody knows the person on the right and they have their own thing. I do think that's the more modern way of doing it.
That's the way
the way I did it was a lot of work for me, but I also liked the idea that the characters didn't know anything, right? Yeah. They were like, so when the game started, each of them had like a scene, and I just went around the table as to, oh, what are you doing? Okay, what are you doing? And then it was all like really strange, and I'm shocked that it worked. They were all converging on this house, this royal house, and they each heard something from a different perspective, and each thought about something that was happening, right? They were, because they heard something, they're going, oh my God, I got to tell somebody this, right? And I think that's what they were thinking. I have no idea because I just presented the situation. So, for example, I forget what
One was a thief, right?
yes.
Who was in the room or coming in the room.
Yes.
And one was I think there was another rogue
Yes.
that was leaving the room, and they saw each other.
Right. And they both had overheard this person talking about it's like a plot.
Yes.
Right. So then the other
I
character.
don't think I was at that house, though. I think I heard the plot or something.
Well, I remember how it happened. So you were invited to that big party. So
Okay.
you were at that party where things are going, and you're like, and then you hear about something going wrong upstairs in the private quarters, and then you rush out and you see one of them jump out the window, right? You think you heard something that they said, and you're like, because you were very pro king.
I
Remember
was,
that?
yes, that
Right.
was my whole mission in
Your
life.
whole mission was to protect the king. And then they were talking about that they overheard such and such say that there was a plot against the king, and you turn around, and I think that they basically threatened you, or you're like, they kind of said, you're going to die now that you heard this. And then you kind of took them out, but then you escaped. And so basically what happened was everything was going on, and then people were like jumping out windows, and they tried to kill you, so you left, and all kinds of things are happening. And so everybody's on the road leaving Suzeo at the same time.
Right.
And that's what I wanted you to do. My idea was, it seemed, for me, I wanted to appear like it wasn't forced.
Right.
It just, things happened, and you guys were all involved in that situation, which was a plot to kill the king.
Right.
Right.
And that was it actually worked out well because there were people in the group that you knew. Like I know Kathy and I had a
Connection.
a connection. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I also know that I had a connection with somebody else. I don't remember exactly who it was at the time. It's been a long time, like
Yeah.
at least 10 years.
It's been 10 years, yeah.
It was much more interesting to start that game instead of just, you come to this place and they need people to
They're hiring.
guard a wagon, right? Which is a good plot to start off a game, right? This way, you have connections with the other players,
I wouldn't
other
say
characters,
I wouldn't say it's a good plot. I think it's simple,
right?
and it works because it works.
Like Mike and I always talk about, you're there for a reason. You want to be playing this game, so you might as well take whatever the GM dishes out at the beginning as how you are all there, or what the plot. You got to bite somehow.
Well, it's funny because like I hear stories about players who are like, what is it, playing hard to get, kind of, right? So let's say you go to a tavern. Oh yeah, and then I like a tavern that's like a tavern, a pub. And somebody goes, I wouldn't want to go to a tavern like that. I want to go to a wine bar, blah, blah, blah. I would never attend a pub or patronize a pub. I mean, and you're like, okay, how am I going to get you two guys? One wants to go to a wine bar, one guy wants a pub. I mean, it just makes it difficult. So there are players who will do that, sometimes just to be a pain in the ass. I know players that do that just to be a pain in the ass to the GM, just to unsettle the GM. And I'm like, that's kind of being a butthead, but just be warned that there are players like that just want to like push the buttons of the GM to see how they react. Yeah, not a player I would want in my group. Too much of that, and I'm okay. Get the hell off of my table. But the latest thing, you're right. This connections is done before the game even starts. Right? It's called Session 0. Everybody gets together, makes their characters, or starts making their characters, and along with making the characters, you make connections to each other. And you do all kinds of stuff, right? And I don't want this to turn into a Session 0 episode, but in that session, you make characters, you make connections, and you tell the GM what kind of game you want to play. Everybody does.
Right.
Do you want a high adventure? Do you want investigation game? Do you want a heist game? I mean, this is a good time to tell the GM what you're interested in doing, and the GM themselves has to fess up and say, I like running this kind of game. This is what I really enjoy doing. Hopefully, there's a meeting of the minds by everybody, and everybody is interested in playing that type of game.
I haven't really been in a lot of Session Zeros. Most of the time, it's because I play with a lot of guys that run games, right? So they go, okay, I want to try this game. Here's the pre-gens, pick a pre-gen. And then when we sit down at the table or over the internet, they go, okay, tell me how you know, come up with a connection, right? And it's hilarious because like when we played the Call of Cthulhu game with, when Shannon was running it, he goes, okay, everybody needs to give me the connections. Bay looks at me and goes, and we both thought the same thing, I guess, or he said it, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. He goes, that's my sister. And I'm like, oh, that works. And Morgan goes, I like her, but I don't think she likes me. And when you're playing with people who are used to doing that, it makes it a lot easier than if the GM goes, what are your connections? And everybody like looks at each other going,
I don't know you.
I have no idea, right?
Yeah, your experience does matter, right?
Yeah. And feeling comfortable, like you want to make a connection with the characters. So just come up with something. Most likely the people around you are going to go with it, right? Unless you say something really crazy, then they might not. But maybe they will. It depends.
No, it's totally true. I think when you're really comfortable with your players, with your fellow players, it's easier just to say yes or even tell them something, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know, Morgan. I think he would say that to anybody.
He would.
But other people wouldn't
Right.
feel that comfortable making that, oh, I really like you, but you don't like me.
Which is a great connection to have, especially in a Call of Cthulhu game. I'm just saying.
For you, yes.
For the person
The person that's liked, yes.
But Morgan plays Call of Cthulhu all the time, and he's a really good role player and GM, so it's easy for him to come up with that.
Oh, yeah.
Where I didn't have to think about it because they both came up with stuff because you're supposed to have connections to two people. And it was easy because I was just
I
sitting
don't remember what my connection was.
I don't either, but I just remember that because I thought it was the
That is
easiest
funny.
one. And some games have it in them. Like I know that
The pre-gens have usually...
pre-gens or when you play the kids one with the robots.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Tales of the Loop.
Tales of the Loop.
Yes.
It's part of the character creation,
Yeah,
right?
it's mandatory.
It's mandatory that you have the connections.
Yes. And what that does is it truly does make it a group, right? You're not just a group not just the people who are smashed together for unknown reasons. You're together because he does this and he's my friend for this and I do tutor to him or I do this for him. So
And it's a little bit easier because you're all most likely in the same school, right?
oh, you're talking about Tales from the Loop specifically?
Yeah.
Yes, and you all go to the same school. And even if you didn't go to the same school, then there's a bigger connection between, oh, we're in a band together.
Right.
Right?
Different kind of,
Right. And so that really does make it a more believable concept of why some of these people are even
Why you're
hanging out
there,
together,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in the Tales from the Loop, you're talking about 80s people, and so people were very cliquish back then.
The jock and the
jock
nerd
and
probably
the
want to
nerd.
hang out. But if one of them's tutoring the other one, then of course they're going to be.
Oh yeah, you hang out, and maybe there's watch any 80s movies or adolescent movies about growing up in the 80s and or even the 90s, I'm sure, and you get that jock that doesn't want to know that. Don't want nobody else to know that he's friends with this nerd, but the nerd is tutoring him and helping him pass history or math so he can stay on the team, right? He doesn't want to get kicked off the team because that's all his world. That kind of stuff, boom, there's a reason why the jock knows the nerd, right? And whether he wants to be known for the guy who's friends with the nerd or not in public, that's up to that character or that player, but also he wants to make sure that that kid is okay.
That's like Tales from the Loop. I know that like if you're playing a fantasy game like D&D, sometimes it's a little bit harder to come up with the connection, but not always. I mean, think about it. You're an adventurer, so you're going to meet other people on the road, and maybe you met somebody, and as the GM, you could give them ideas. Maybe you two met on the road when you were in this town, and you've been together for that long, and let them come up with whatever. Give them a suggestion,
right?
So that then they can have an idea of what you mean by a connection,
right? Like the GM say, well, you guys are starting here, but both your characters are from out here.
Yeah.
So maybe you met on the road coming here,
and then they can talk amongst themselves and
right.
figure it out. Then there's games that you ask the specific question to the person on the right, like,
right?
Why? When was the? I was reading some of them. Some of the questions were odd. When was the last time we sat up all night and watched the sunset? And I'm like going, okay, I wouldn't ask that question to the person on the right of me.
I mean, it depends on the game, right? If you're talking about a high school or college set game, a game set in college or high school, that does happen.
Right.
It could be, oh, you got in a fight with your boyfriend. I was the only one that has a car that has gas, and I felt sorry for you. I mean, it eliminates that romantic thing, or maybe
Right.
there's a romantic thing between you, and it totally sets a different situation.
Yes.
Or it could be romantic, right? Oh, we fell asleep, blah blah, wake up, little Susie, kind of thing at the movies situations. So I think just because something sounds weird, you can turn it into something that's not weird and just totally different than immediately. Oh, why were you guys together watching the sunrise? You guys must be a couple, and then you, as a player, you go, no,
No, that's not.
you don't like that, so you come up with something that will give you an alternate reason for why you guys are together and watching the sunrise.
Which could be whatever, but it makes it more interesting. I was going to say that, and I know I talk about Shadowrun too much, but in Shadowrun, you really need to have a reason to be with the people that you're with, right? Because you have to trust these people, and sometimes, because it's a very dangerous place, right?
You're very paranoid, yeah. Usually, the characters are paranoid.
Yeah. So you come up with ideas like you met him when you were doing this run or that kind of thing, and you saw that he was good at whatever, and you've known each other, or you live in the same building. You make different things so the characters have a reason to be together.
Right. He needed this person for this because
Yeah.
you wanted this to happen or whatever. And a lot of times, sometimes it's a little bit contrived, right? It's forced, these connections. But I think as you get more used to making them or doing this little endeavor, I think it gets easier. And the connections don't sound so weird or hokey is
Right.
the term I was kind of looking for. Because when you're first doing it, you're like, oh, I don't know what to say. It could be a little daunting, right? Because you're being asked this question, and maybe you don't have a lot of experience in that situation. You've never done that, and you're like, and you don't want to say anything that's either going to be laughed at or, oh no, that's a dumb idea. Usually, I would hope that there's no table that would say something like that, but people with a little bit more experience can like coach you, help you fine tune the connection that you're trying to go after. Well, why would you say that? Do you mean it like this romantically, or do you mean it like a friendship, or is this person somehow related to you, like a second cousin? So things like that can change the way the connections work, right? From being something that could be like a love interest, which might make people uncomfortable, it becomes a familiar connection. Like, oh, he's my second
We used
cousin.
to do that all the time when we spent the weekends with grandma.
Yeah,
Stuff like
you
that.
know each other because exactly. You had to spend the summer at grandma's house or whatever.
A cousin is a good one. I never thought about a cousin because that's a really good one because those are the people that you're going to have known your whole life, right? And
Depending on your situation, right?
Right.
Maybe he's a cousin that you only saw 2 or 3 times,
right.
Because they live far away.
Or you spend all summer with
spend
them.
all summer, every summer with them, and every holiday. Hey, Kane, how you doing? Whatever your name is. I think what's really important about connections is that it really does make the table work better, right?
Right.
It gives the characters a reason to care about each other, other than
A reason to keep them from getting shot or killed or
Yeah.
whatever.
other than just, oh, you're good at watching my back, which
Yeah.
is probably very important. But at the same
Which
time,
may be the connection that you need.
but but it also might be that you want a little bit stronger connection than that. Like,
Yeah.
well, he may be watch my back, but then if my back is worth 20,000 gold to him,
then
maybe my back isn't worth too much. You know what I mean? It's like, let's say you're done with the dungeon or whatever and you're pulling out the gold, the loot, and I'm like, and there's I don't know how many.
and
of
there's
you.
all these guys armed to the teeth with you, and you're
Oh
going.
yeah, you're pulling out. There's 4 of you, right? Jacob is hurt. He needs a cleric. This other guy is half hit points, and this one guy's going, oh, that's all I needed was this wand of this or that. And this one guy is there, and you guys are looking at each other going, instead of dividing this by 4, we could divide it by 2. And you're looking at each other, and things like that could happen. And so you want something else to make sure that doesn't happen. That greed doesn't oversee the group's cohesion. There's a lot of greedy people out there. They see the gold, they see the magical items, or how much the magical items are worth. Now I can't use that wand, but I bet you it's worth 35,000 gold or whatever it is.
Well, the thing that I found when I was reading this, researching this one, was that a lot of games have stuff written into them to do this, right?
These days.
Powered by the Apocalypse
Oh.
has it in it. And a lot of them have questions like, how are you? What is your relationship with this character?
Right.
And they want you to have at least two connections so that it gives the group more reason to be together. Because
Right.
one could be someone you met, and one could be a familial relation, or
Right.
or your friend from that lived next door to you, or you've been in since you've been going to school since kindergarten together.
Right.
Those are the normal connections that people have.
Right.
If you're playing a military game, you were in the same unit, now you're out, and you know this guy knows computers. Or it's Shadowrun, this guy got you out of this situation when you met each other. And a lot of times in Shadowrun, it is a military connection, right?
A military, or even like
or a corporate connection.
Corporate connection, or somebody, you saved somebody's life, or they saved your life, and you're like, oh, when they didn't have to.
Right.
And then you became friends or whatever. You became more than just acquaintances. And I think that's what's important, is that these aren't just people you know, it's people you trust.
Right.
So that changes the dynamic of the group.
Well, and that makes the game better because it's like real life, right? Because you have connections with usually you have connections with the people you're sitting down to play with, unless it's a one shot at a convention or at a game store that you've never met the people. And then you really want to have some kind of connection with the characters to have a connection. So
right. And
it'll be more fun.
Even if you're playing a one shot with people you don't know at a convention or wherever, the connection is between you and them is that you're all in the same boat.
Right.
And that kind of like, what is it? It's like, well, I can't think of what the phrase is, but when you go through something with somebody, it kind of usually makes you like friends. Like, it doesn't have to be a traumatic experience, but let's say you're both in a race together or something, and you both take first or second prize, or first or second, or even more so, like let's say you guys get lost in the woods, even though you don't know each other. Like let's say you go for like
you're out camping,
fifth grade camp,
yeah.
Right? Everybody's going on this field trip hike, and you two get separated, and all of a sudden you're lost after 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours the next day, depending on the length of time. By the time that ordeal is over, you're probably going to be best friends with that person after the ordeal's over, after you're safe, because you're like, man, we really went through the stuff. And I really believe this. So like, anytime people together go through something and experience the same problem or the challenge, that glues you together, because you guys become, what is it?
You have to work together.
You got to work together. You depend on each other and survive the situation together, and that bonds you. It's like what is it? Something to do with foxholes, right? When you're together in a foxhole, either one, you find God supposedly, and the other one is you become friends with everybody in that foxhole. So I think that's what happens in certain situations in role playing. It's true, because like when you experience the same thing together as a group, it does make you friends. Even at a one shot.
I've always thought that, like, for one shots, the characters should be provided. Like when you're doing it, but when you do that, you need to give the players the opportunity to come up with their connections to each other, right? So that when they're sitting around for that first 10 minutes of the game, then you're giving them you're giving them some agency, because you provided them with the character.
Right.
So give them some agency, how they come together, how they know each other.
In fact, I've seen this in certain quick starts of rules. Every quick start is different, but they actually have connections to the characters.
Right.
It's built into the pre-gens. And I think the reason is so you won't backstab them, right?
Right.
It's in paper, oh, he's your friend because of this and that. And in your mind, you're not going to like leave him behind, or try not to leave him behind. Right. And it's going to be a big decision if you do leave them behind.
Well, most of the time when role players sit down to a one shot, even at a convention or anything, they're not going to leave the rest of the characters behind. I'm just saying, it doesn't matter what the connection is, right?
You never know.
Well,
you're right.
But
you're right.
I have never been in a situation where
I remember we were playing Godlike. So Godlike is like a World War II where you're superheroes, but you're not really superheroes. You have like one superhero talent. and that's it. Everything else is like you're still vulnerable to bullets unless you happen to have that.
A non-vulnerable to bullets talent.
What, non-vulnerable. Yeah, unless you have like the armor thing where bullets can't hurt you. So in one game, I was like super strong, right? I was super strong. So what I would do is I would hold 2 machine guns and go, big old huge machine guns and fire them. So at one point there was a situation where we were retreating, right? We were retreating, and we come across the Germans are attacking, and we were the allies, of course. Kind of like the whole situation of when they Dunkirk when they were shipping people out
trying to get people
so
out.
that was the kind of situation what was happening. We were retreating, and in the front of our retreat was this French village, and they weren't moving fast enough, right? And they were going to get overrun, no problem. So we're in our Jeep, all our godlike guys. The GM goes, oh yeah, there's all these French people leaving this little village. He goes, you don't think they're going to make it because the Germans are advancing too fast, and these people are on foot. I go, well, we got to slow them down. That's what I said. The Germans, right? And they're like, and then the rest of the group looks at each other at the table. And they're like, what do you mean we got to slow them down? The whole thing was like we were ordered not to
Engage.
not to get caught or not to die too. Also, and I'm like, and I looked that down on my character sheet, and he had his motivations and stuff. Like Gil was running the game. I'm like, well, I don't think this guy's gonna leave. In his background, something had happened where his family was killed because something had happened. Right? He was an African American, and I'm like, I don't think he would leave in this situation. Gil goes, so what do you do? I go, I'm in the back of the Jeep. I'm just going to get off to grab my machine guns and say, hey, guys, take off. Everybody in the group was looking at me going, you're staying? You're going to die. I'm like, I'm going to do my best to try to save these people. And they're like, okay. They took off on me, right? And they took off on me, and I didn't even like role play anything. The games, they took off, and Gil goes, okay, I understand that. The GM goes, I understand that. And then the game ended, right? They made it to safety, and I was never heard from again. And so I thought it was a very interesting situation. Now, if I had better connections to the other players, maybe they would have stopped, and maybe we would have
Well, I know that if they would have been your normal, like your Friday nights group, they would have just gone, okay, I guess this is the hill we die on.
Right. And there would have been some discussion about that, right? Maybe like, well, look, we have orders to go back. We blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
actually, I don't think there would be much discussion between your Friday nights group. Felipe and Mike would never let villagers die.
well, I thought it was interesting because I wasn't sure if it was like, I didn't know what Gil's gambit was at that point, right? The GM's gambit. I'm like, does he want us to stop and fight? Or does he want us to leave him behind? And like, rest assured they were going to be, because they were moving so fast because they were, they were in tanks and stuff like that, and these people were walking, and we had the Jeep, so we're like, we're taking off, right? And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter because my character is this type of character, right? And he's like, it's not about protecting the innocent and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, you make it hard for me not to do what this character says. Sure, I wanted to stay on that Jeep, and my character, I would have wanted my character to live, but I really got into that character. I go, no, what the heck? It was a one shot too, so I'm not like really invest in this character, but I really was because I was like willing to like stay behind and do what I could to try to make sure that these people had the best shot of getting to where they needed to go. Other people in that group were like, no, we're following orders.
I've never experienced that.
Yeah, so I was like, I left behind, and I could just see it in my mind's eye, me with my 2 machine guns holding them up. And those guys just leave me behind, and that picture of I get smaller and smaller as they roll out, and I thought it was a great ending.
There you go.
Gil really loved it. Gil was like, "Wow, that's pretty good." Oh yeah, well, it's in my character. I don't know if I had better connections with more people would have stayed. I don't know if that would have mattered in the whole situation. If we would have even saved anybody, because like I said, it was overwhelming. But everybody had different superpowers, right? I forget what other superpowers there was. But Ming was just strong, and so a single bullet would have killed me. But I don't know what the other people's powers were because they're superpower. I mean, they got that one thing that they can do. So maybe it would have made a difference. It doesn't matter. They made it to the evacuation zone and hide
So,
things.
what are your ideas for helping people to make connections if they're nervous or they get when the GM says, "Okay, what are your connections to the people at the table? Here's some questions. Figure it out."
Well,
Or do you give them questions? Do you try to you want them to be able to figure it out themselves, but you don't want them to feel uncomfortable about it?
wow. Well, one is probably ahead of time saying, well, we got to make connections. Think about that to each other. What kind of connections you want
Well, it
between the
depends on the
characters.
kind of game, right? If it's
Right.
if they've never met each other or if they're
Well, just put that idea in their head, so
right.
it's not like, okay,
Yeah.
why are you connected to the person next to you? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean? You know what I mean? So it's like as your let's session 0 or as you're just meeting, you gain your characters, you're reading over. Oh, by the way, you're reading over your characters. Please think about making a connection to the players next to you for one reason or another, and then talk about something else right away.
Right.
Like say, okay, so first thing we got to make sure is, do you have all the equipment you want? And then they still have that idea in their head. Oh, I got to make a connection. Think about it. And then intersperse that with maybe, if you're dealing with people who have never done this kind of thing, I would say make a connection, like either make them, and give examples.
Give them an example
Right.
or give them some questions to think about, like how connection questions or connection ideas or something.
Right. So give examples. Probably, I haven't thought about other questions you can do to narrow or give them a better idea of what
Well,
you're looking
I
at.
only thought about questions because when I was researching it, a lot of the games actually have questions
Okay.
written in. Like, I gave you one of them, but there are also other ones like, how do you know the person next to you? Or what unit were you in that you knew this person?
A lot,
Or
yes. A lot of
that kind
times,
thing.
the games themselves will have very leading questions, right?
Right.
How did this person save your life?
Right.
And it could be like physically saved your life, or I was there when they were depressed, or I was there when.
When a truck was coming at them
Yes,
and I pushed them out of the way.
Yeah, it could be all kinds of things. So sometimes they do have questions like that. Well, how did this person save your life? How did this person make a difference in your life? And then those kind of leading
Those
questions.
are like really hard questions. Right?
And they are hard because they're very ambiguous, right?
Right.
They could be or very wide open. You want as wide open of the questions as you want, because you don't want to tell them, well, how did this guy get you out of the well
Right.
and save your life?
You want them to come up with them on their own.
Right. And I think anything you can help, one, make it so it's not so shocking or jarring. Tell them in advance at the very beginning, saying, oh, by the way, as you're looking over your characters, you need to think about the connections you have between the player next to you on your left and next to you on your right. I'll be asking questions later on to try to figure out what those connections are, but just keep that in your mind.
I think it might be. I like the idea of giving them examples, like because that way that helps a lot of people, like me. Because if you ask me that direct question,
Yes.
I'm going to be going.
Like a deer in headlights, right?
I need a week to think about this.
How much time do we have?
'Cause
Can I have extra time, please?
I'm going to need to take a makeup test. But if you give them examples like, are you related to this person in some way? Is this your cousin, or you met this person at the drugstore when you were looking for this and they helped you, depending on whatever it is.
Right.
You met this person in the library when you were researching something. Different.
Yes.
You give them specific ideas, and then they can take those and come up with their own, right?
Right.
Or
Well, that
and if
sounds
they
good.
can't come up with their own, then it's just like a suggestion, right?
And some of those might depend on the game, right?
Right.
Like you said, in the library. Well, why would I be at the library? I'm an accountant, right? But if you're in high school or in college, that might make a difference.
Or if
right?
it's an investigative game, that might be a reason that you know each
Right.
other.
So I think as a GM, you could definitely tailor the questions or the suggestions to the specific game that you're playing in.
And that might just make it easier if it's a new concept to you to make connections to characters or to the players, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Because I mean, I remember when the first time I heard that, I was like the same way. I'm like, what? And I looked at the person and I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. It was at a convention, of course. And I'm like, and then the person and then you could spot the people who had done it before.
Right.
They go, oh, they rattle off something real quick, and what do you think about that? And they even ask the person, oh, do you think that's okay? And they're like, and then the other person goes, oh, I guess okay. And so you definitely see that difference of people who have done that before and people who have never done it.
Right.
And the more like every
The more you experience,
Yes.
the easier it is.
just like any skill, the more you use it, the better you are at it the next time you do it.
And helps to, when you know that that's your brother that's next to you, right? That is going to, he's your brother. Whatever that relationship means to you, it doesn't matter, but you know that somehow he's going to help you in this game. You're not going to leave your brother behind, and your brother's not going to leave you behind.
Right. I think when you are asking people this as a GM at a table, and a lot depends on the situation, and this seems to me like it'd be harder for people who are at a convention one shot or at a store or something like that. And just as the GM, you can like ask individual players, oh, spend some time chit chatting with each other, talk about your characters with your neighbors, and see, so they have an idea of what your character's like, right? Or even introduce the characters, introduce yourself and then introduce the characters. Like some sort of meeting. Hi, my name is Saul, and today I'm playing the paladin. Oh, my paladin is whatever, strict. He follows the law completely to the letter, gives no quarter, and expects none. I'm like, whoa. Okay, and some people
I don't want to know this person.
You're connected to him. The next person is going, wow, I'm Bill, and I'm the sorcerer. I like casting magic missile. Sometimes it just could be the intimidating part, but I think like the more you chat around the table, the more you tell people about your character, it tells you a little bit about yourself too, and I think it makes it easier to make that connection to go, oh, okay, so this guy's really like this paladin I described. He's really a pain in the ass. Let's say you're a cleric. Oh, he comes to me and confesses his whatever transgressions or whatever, something. And you guys could talk about that and stuff. And I think that's the best and easiest way to do it. I like the idea of the leading questions. I like the idea of giving examples, of course. And because some people who have never done it go, I don't even know what you're talking about. But as you give examples, they go, oh, okay. It kind of like it sparks that idea in your brain of what could happen or what kind of connections are acceptable. Because some people go, oh, I don't know if this connection is right. This is this kind of connection.
Well, some people overthink stuff, and some people are like, just throw it out and go, does that work for you?
Exactly.
and you think about it for a second and go, okay, that's fine. Yeah. This is a game, so it's fun to do different things. Right.
And even if you've played together a long time, people will surprise you. They're like, oh, wow, I never thought about that kind of connection or that kind of connection between players. Yeah, let's do that. And I think that's fun. And I think, that's what role playing is about, is experiencing things and having fun. And I think making a group at the table more cohesive, more reason to be together other than, oh, we all met at a tavern and we all want to make money. Doesn't pull you together sometimes from the very beginning. And when you have those connections at the very beginning, I think it's easier as you move along during your adventures to stay together as a group and make it make sense that you guys are still together after 10 years or however long your campaign goes.
So if you haven't tried this, I suggest that you do, and we gave you a couple suggestions on how to do it. So
yes.
Hopefully it'll make your game more exciting and give people a reason to be there besides just a tavern episode.
Yes.
So good luck. There you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.